right, my name is Mark Darnell. I'm with the EPA. I'm actually stationed in the Cleveland area. I didn't grow up too far from here. I'm from Warren, Ohio. So give you a little bit of background about me and why I think my background is important. I worked the Flint drinking water incident back in 2016. And one thing I learned from that incident is trust doesn't rebuild easily, and in some cases it never rebuilds. I still spend time up there with some of my colleagues, and there are still people in that community 7 years later that don't trust the drinking water system. You can understand why. But what is also important is continuity. The reason that some of my coworkers and I still maintain a presence in that community is so that we can answer questions. You have many questions today, and as the mayor said, I can't answer all your questions. I certainly can't answer your health questions, but I can address some of the things that might relate to your health questions. But I and some of my colleagues have committed to stay here until we can, at a minimum, get through the main part of the contamination cleanup, which is going to take some time. It's going to take several months. I'm sure some of your questions relate to that, so I'll wait till we get to that. But I just wanted to make sure you understand the context of why it's important to, help stabilize things by you guys seeing the same faces over and over again. So you don't have to ask the same questions over and over again. So I hope that helps.
I just want to introduce myself from that table.
I have a question, and I don't mean this, it might sound disrespectful, but it is not as fair.
It's okay.
And it's free. As a village as a whole, have you sought any legal counsel at all? And is that, it might be a silly question.
As a city?
Yes.
As a village?
Yes.
Okay. So,
Because it's so big, because it is bigger than anybody's ever done it before. I don't mean it disrespectfully at all.
no, we are out of our league on this one. I will be the first one to admit it. So, yes and no. We have, they're consolidated. Because as of right now, we are getting everything we need as the village. I know not the people, please don't take that wrong. As the village, we are. As soon as you involve a lawyer, everything's going to stop and the funds are going to dry up, and then we're going to wait years. We need to get everything. They pay for all the fire equipment. Everybody uses that. Your house is on fire, you want people to be able to come and put it out. They just paid for new filters for the water. Or what they are is a carbon filler. They're calling it a polisher. So it'll just clean up the water even more. It'll be a better tasting water. It'll be, but there is nothing wrong with the water. Everything that we've seen, the water flows south from that area, like the aquifer flows. But we want to be, we're being proactive. So we put in they're charcoal water filters, and they, like I said, they polish the water, they really clean the water. It's a proactive thing. So if, you get a bad result now, then, oh, shit, what are you going to do? So,
Do you test before that?
yes, we test raw water, and we test after we clean it. So then when these get put in, it'll be raw water in the line, and then after it goes through this. And before, the EPA, Ohio EPA, we only had to test every 3 years. Was the only time we ever tested. That's the only time we ever tested for volatile organic. Now, when we do big repairs or big stuff like that, we would test, and we wouldn't wait 3 years. But now we're testing every week. So literally, you're getting 150 times more testing. Actually, 156 times more testing than you would before all this happened. So it's a positive thing. And we still test daily as far as quality. We don't do like VOCs every day, but every day they test water to make sure, bacteria and stuff like that.
Yeah. And to add to what the mayor said, you had mentioned VOCs earlier, benzene. So that's where I have concerns. I have concerns about how much material will remain in the ground in the longer term. Right? So the removal plan is to take everything out into those tracks. We know that some contamination is spread laterally, so we're going to the railroad under our oversight is going to have to chase the waste and get as much as we can out. But there's no way to achieve 100% cleanup. If I told you that, I'd be lying.
How how deep are they going?
So my concern will always be long-term, making sure there's proper groundwater monitoring in place. Even though the water table doesn't look like it's flowing, as the mayor said, flowing towards municipal wells, there has to be monitoring. So the state's already installed a couple extra monitoring wells, and they will install more once all the remediation.
To piggyback off that question, can you explain to everybody, because it's a big concern with the .1 being tested in your home and these chemicals being well below .1, so you explained it to me. This is a big question.
Happy to. I just want to finish my point earlier. That's where the VOCs, when they're in the air, they're evaporating. They're breaking down quick. When they're in the ground, they don't. And so that has to be part of the monitoring program. Let me finish your question.
Yes, we have consulted outside counsel. With us, giving us recommendations, stuff like that, but yes, hopefully we get everything we need and we never have to sue. That's probably a butter tree, so, but yes we have. And we have outside environmental consultants.
My concern,
Trent, who gave authorization for them to be able to use the park?
I do not know. It wasn't myself. It was a situation that was ongoing, and I think they just sort of did it themselves. And as soon as we found out about it, they weren't up there that long, and we tried to get them the hell out of there. I was very upset. I was the incident command one time. As soon as I found out, we had to get them out of there. But yes, I think they sort of just did it themselves.
And that's what I wanted. Strong arm.
Well, it wasn't necessarily strong arm. I just think that everybody that would have made that decision was busy in incident command, and it sort of just, they came in and then we were like, hold up here. So I do want to say it was just SOX, and they have done all those testing. So far, the preliminary test, everything looks good. They did all the soil samples all around the edge. They're going to dig up. They're going to put sod down where it was tore up and stuff like that.
Where can we see their results?
Yes, everything will be made public on the EPA's website. There was joint testing with was it you guys or was it Ohio?
So
He can answer that.
So Arcadis did the testing with our oversight, and we also collected split samples just to make sure that the data was quality. 7 samples were collected at various locations around the park. I've seen all the preliminary data and everything below, even residential screening levels, meaning individual yards or 24/7.
Chemical for dioxin?
Dioxin, yes, dioxin, that's important, they came back to screen. And we're waiting for two of the samples. We have the preliminaries, but they haven't been quality checked yet, and I'm actually hoping to get them in today. I want to make sure the city has them in their hands before we get that.
Just and then go piggyback on that, the event permit's still not signed. They advertise, but the permit's not going to be signed when we get to the vote. So I want to ease all that. I know there was some stuff on social media. I've sort of just taken myself off social media because it's just I just can't do that. Permit's still not signed. It's sitting on Tracy's desk, and she's agreed with me. We won't sign it until we get all the results and they're verified. We're also working with the company because we're not scientists. We're a mayor and a village manager. So we're working with the company. It was announced last night. It was emergency legislation that we, I forget the name of the company. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'll get it for you. And they're gonna go over all the data because we're just looking at numbers on a page. We just have to trust what people are telling us. So we're gonna have the EPA is gonna tell us one thing. We're hiring our own independent consultants to tell us what the results are.
I have another part of that question before we go into something else. You said about the soil samples. Are you absolutely testing for every byproduct, chemical? There's a lot that needs to be tested that has not been tested. So we need every possible one that was on that train that could have been produced, and we're, as citizens, we're not gonna accept nothing less than that from city, EPA, railroad, all complete testing of all of that.
So in the plan, I'll explain what we're testing for. And in the plan, you can see the whole list of chemicals. It's a whole page full of chemicals that we have listed in the plan. That's, that you can find on our website. I'm sure Linda can point you to it, because she's researched it more than I have. Semi-volatile organics are the primary indicator chemical that we expect to see from any burn like that. Okay, so we're doing the whole list of semi-volatile organics. Okay?
Thank you.
And because of our concern over dioxins and furans, we're also doing a whole list of dioxins and furans.
Benzene?
Benzene is a volatile. We wouldn't expect that. Benzene will volatilize and burn like that. So we're not doing the volatiles because, again, once they got in the air, they're gone. They can throw
What if
out.
it comes back into the system,
What's that?
the benzene?
So-
I've had my blood work in my urine tested, and I do have benzene and vinyl chloride in my urine.
Okay, well,
Yeah, I just got a phone call when I pulled into the parking lot today from my doctor. I took my vinyl chloride urine test 2 weeks ago. I initially wanted it a month ago when I wasn't feeling well. My doctor is the doctor that the health clinic in town refers me to. I went there and he told me if I'm running testing, go to the emergency room. Well, I don't know what kind of insurance everybody else has, but for me, that's expensive to go to the emergency room to get testing. When I was told that they could do it, the doctor could order it. He refused to order it. He was with me, we were both flabbergasted. So then sometime later, after being on Fox News with Dr. Siegel, I get a phone call from my doctor. Oh, well, we'll do those tests now. No. Surprise. So I just had the test done 2 weeks ago, a little less than 2 weeks ago. And they called me today and said, I'm positive for vinyl chloride. So everybody who's been at the town hall meeting probably heard me pop into the microphone and say, it disappears like pixie dust. Because it goes, it'll be out of your system. No point to test to it after a couple of days or weeks after the exposure. I'm 2.9 miles away and I work in Pennsylvania. How in the hell am I testing positive if this stuff isn't around or in the air? And why was I sick? And everybody's saying, oh, well, it's just for, the fumes aren't bad. This was EPA only. The fumes were not bad. And, smells can't hurt you. And that a lot of it was the power of suggestion. Just because one of us says that we're sick, we all want to jump on the bandwagon. Because, I have cancer, so anybody else feel like having cancer? Like, that's totally not how it works. And a lot of us that had the symptoms know that they were very real. So I don't understand how, I'm like jaw-dropped that I tested positive for it. I never thought that would have happened. So how can that happen if it's not in the air? I don't live in the 1 mile radius, because that's the hot zone. And I work in Pennsylvania, and I spend very limited time. The only time I come to town, Mark. So, or is for the meetings. How can that be? So that's my question. How does that happen?
so let me make sure, because I would make sure I have my notes right, so I can pass this along. Like I said, on the medical side, I'm
Right.
I don't know a lot, right? Because that's not what I do. But you said benzene and vinyl chloride, right? And you
Jenny
said,
has been seeing
I do live in the hot zone. I'm right there, but yes, I
okay,
remember.
and you're vinyl chloride, so I just want to make sure I have
I
that
don't
right.
know if they even tested my urine for that. We may have had, different testing. I was told that my urine analysis was just specific to vinyl.
Okay. Like I said, I can pass that on in terms of exposures. Your question, your guess is as good as mine, because we have real-time mobile laboratories, analytical equipment. I drive around town all day, you guys.
Around town, but not 2.9 miles
I
out.
understand. I
So
get
that little,
Yeah.
that went over, and I'm nearby Leslie Run. But supposedly, there's no vinyl chloride in that. That's the butyl
That's the
acrylate.
butyl, right?
So I just don't even understand that how I would not be exposed to it. I mean, that was the least of my worries. I was like, oh, I don't even think that that's gonna be necessary.
And I think that's kind of the elephant in the room, is that people are sick. And we keep being told that everything's okay.
Well, you're not here to hear it.
Right, and to speak, what you said about people, just hearing these symptoms and getting them, I've met with people that have 10-month-old babies. I've met with people that have autistic children that don't have the wherewithal of what's going on in the community, that's sick. And as far as the testing, we need some kind of guidance as to, what we get tested for, who can do the test. And I know that that's, you're outside of that medical realm, but if you could point us in the direction of someone that can get us that information.
I think